I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and you eventually learn to categorize them. The oversharers, the clock watchers, the ones who make the office their entire personality. But then there was them, they didn't fit. They felt like a book with the first 50 pages ripped out. On the surface, they were the perfect employee on time, professional and polite, but there was a vibration of offness I couldn't ignore. It was the way they'd scan the room every time they walked into a meeting, subconsciously checking for every exit. It was the way their voice would drop an octave when a stranger walked into the office. I realized I wasn't sitting next to a coworker. I was sitting next to a ghost. For the first few months, I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. I'd tell myself, maybe they're just an introvert. But the longer we worked together, the more the glitches appeared. I remember one specific Tuesday. A car backfired in the parking lot, a loud, sharp crack that echoed through the glass. Most of us just blinked. But my coworker was halfway under their desk before the sound even faded. Their faces were pale, their eyes darting, and they were breathing like they'd just run a marathon. That wasn't just office stress, that was a survival reflex. Then there were the wall days. Some days we'd be joking about coffee or deadlines, but then, without warning, the invisible wall would go up. They'd become distant, guarded, like they'd retreated to a place I wasn't allowed to follow. It was unsettling because it felt so deeply personal, like I was witnessing a trauma response I wasn't meant to see. I started testing the waters with small, harmless questions. Where were you working before this? How long have you lived in the city? Standard office small talk, but every question was met with a lockdown. Oh, just a firm up north, they'd say. Or I've been here a while, vague. Short subject changed. They had no digital footprint, no LinkedIn photos, no Facebook tags. No old coworkers ever reached out to them. I caught them once scrolling through old photos on their phone during a break. Their expression was soft, nostalgic, and incredibly sad. But the second my shadow hit their desk, they locked the screen instantly. It was as if they were holding onto a life they were no longer allowed to live. The curiosity turned into a genuine need to know. I did what anyone would do. I asked around. But it turns out nobody knew them. They didn't go to happy hours. They didn't have work friends. They were just there. Then the mask finally slipped. I walked past a conference room and heard their voice, not the polite office voice, but something hard and analytical. I heard fragments that made my blood run cold. The investigation. They're still looking for the files. I had to get out or I wouldn't have made it. I realized then that they weren't always office workers. My coworker was a high-stakes investigative journalist who had dug too deep into a corporate conspiracy involving people who don't like to be exposed. They had been threatened, followed, and eventually they had to disappear. This quiet, boring office job was their witness protection program. Everything clicked, the guardedness, the scanning of rooms, the fear of being photographed. They weren't being difficult. They were surviving. I never confronted them. I didn't tell them I knew, because some stories aren't meant to be dragged into the light. But my perception shifted. I became the person who helped protect their space. Trust isn't always built through words. Sometimes it's built by seeing someone without exposing them. It's a reminder that everyone you sit next to is carrying a history you can't see. If you've ever discovered a secret about a coworker, or if you feel like you're working with a ghost yourself, tell me your story in the comments. And for more unmasked truths, subscribe to Maskless Tales.